thanks very much everyone for coming along to hear what I've got to share in this. I think the reason there is something worth sharing is because the whole social media thing is really a huge part of an author's life, and really has to be these days, because a lot of it's about sort of one-to-many relationships. You know, you're establishing a community around ideas and things like that, and also building a support network of people that help you with as you develop what you're doing, or help you with take you into other audiences where you perhaps go and speak at an event and that kind of thing. So the social media is a whole big part of that. So I've spent really a lot of time in this, and the amount of time it takes up in my working week is probably a minimum of 2 hours a day, probably more, because it is the work. You know, it is the work. So if nothing else, I've spent a lot of time in this and I've learned a fair amount about it, and I think I would suggest it's probably useful to you in various different ways, you know, to just share my experiences. I've also a lot of the learning has been from Americans who are basically further down the track in this than we are here, really, although there are differences as well. So why would you even want to sort of pay attention to all of this whole social media area? Well, I would kind of offer three really. Clearly one is building your business in some kind of way. Another is, as I said, building a support network of people who are maybe not customers or suppliers or whatever, that you might not actually trade with, but they're in some way fellow travellers on the journey, and you can share advice and you know, and learning and so on. And the third one is, of course, taking an idea or a message to the world, really, and building a community around a mission or a project or an idea. And that's in many ways what I'm about as well. So my use of social media is sort of coloured by those, or is determined by those two things: taking a message out and building a business, really, all of those. So for me, one of the key things I think is, people often say, oh, we want to have a workshop on, say, Twitter or LinkedIn or whatever. I say, well, that's fine, you can do that, but really what matters, or what makes the difference, is how you use them in combination, because they're all just ways of building relationships with people. So I'm going to offer you a sort of metaphor around that, which I would suggest might kind of be helpful, and to sort of draw the parallels between online social networking, if you like, and what we do face to face. And so how you can approach the whole online thing as if it's face to face, effectively, because it is actually very similar. Because at the end of the day, it's actually all about people. So I'm going to come into that in just a second, and we will talk about the different networks and how they fit into that, at least in my kind of understanding of it. So where do we kind of start with this? Well, it begins with getting clear what it is we want to say, if you like, in life, or you know, in our work. What do we stand for? What is our message? And the expression of that is really in a blog, is generally speaking, is where that kind of starts. Maybe at this point, can I just ask who here, there's no right or wrong answers here, I'm just interested, you know, who at the moment here does write a blog from time to time? Does anybody do that? Stephen does. Who's on Twitter, let's say? A few there.
Only for business.
Only for business, whatever. LinkedIn. Yes, on LinkedIn. Facebook. Okay, some of that. Using Skype, say, or some other video calling thing. Yeah, so it was various different kind of things. So